Very good to have you.
You're on mute, Mary.
Okay, welcome everybody. Does the live stream go now, Colette?
Yeah, you're free to start, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome everybody to this meeting of Legal Committee, 13th of May 2025. We have apologies for absence this morning from Tom Halpin, SPA board member, from DCC Alan Spears and Duncan Campbell from Police Scotland, and ACC Lynn Ratcliffe, who's attending from Police Scotland, will be arriving late, but will be with us in due course. Can I move to item 3 and take any declarations of interest and connections from members? Do we have any? No, I'm seeing a shaking of heads. Thank you. We have no decisions since the last meeting. And decision on taking items in private in accordance with section 20 of the SPA standing orders. I'm inviting members to take items 5 to 9 in private. Is that agreed? Thank you. I move to item 2 and to the minute of the meeting held on the 11th of March for approval. Members content to approve? Thank you. And item 2.2 is the Legal Committee action log and matters arising. I'm going to propose that we revert to action 002 after we've taken item 3. Other than that, are members content to close 001 and 003? Thank you very much. Thank you. We move to item 3, Legal Services Claims Handling Quarterly Statistical Information Report. And I'm handing over to James to present this item. James.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. This report represents the first of its type. Members may recall that up until now, members were provided with the tables which are again reproduced within what I would regard as the first part of the report. That remains there, as members have advised that they do find figures on settlements that were achieved within the last quarter, together with a running total of the financial year, to be of interest and data that they wish to be apprised of. So that remains there. And with your permission, members, what I would propose to do is just go through the report, take it as read, but perhaps highlight some parts of the report that I would wish to bring to your attention. So if turning to page 3 of the report, we start with the table on employers' liability claims for January to March. And there were 16 employer liability claims settled within that period at a cost of around about £414,000. That brings the employer liability claims for the financial year to 53 settlements and £1.238 million. £1.238 million does represent a jump from one of the last 5 years, but actually a reduction against 4 of the last 5 years. The employer liability bill, for want of a better phrase, in 23-24 was 1.76 million, and that's reduced to 1.24 million. We were in fact on course to have the lowest employer liability figures over the last 6 years, right up until the end when we settled a high value employer liability case that members will be aware of. It was the subject of a report to this committee. If you're seeking further information on that, I'm more than happy to address questions on that within perhaps the private session if Robin and Susan are content that it would constitute personal data. However, as I say, employer liability, we were on track to actually have the lowest amount of employer liability settlements over the last 6 years, but a case at the end that members are aware of brought that over the figure of 1.05 million, but still under the figures at 1920, 21-22, 22-23 and 23-24. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions on that at the end of this summary of the report. With regards to public liability, 2.6 million of the 2.7 million actually landed in the last quarter. And again, almost the entirety of that was in respect of one matter. Again, a matter that members are aware of, but again, matters that I'm more than happy to address in private session should members wish a little bit more information on that. As I say, we were on course to actually have quite a significant reduction in public liability, apart from the settlement of the one matter involving a number of pursuers in the last quarter. Again, it would be remiss of me to say that when you're operating at around about the £100,000 to £150,000 mark, that represented almost a 50% reduction in the amount that we paid out last year. And if you go back to 21-22, where we paid out 1.6 million, it would represent a 16th of what we paid out in that year. But the one matter brought us up to 2.7 million, which quite clearly is the most significant amount that we paid out in the last 6 years. But I hope members take comfort in the fact that 2.6 million of that 2.7 million was in respect of one matter that you were addressed on. With regards to motor liability, the sum for the financial year of 24-25 was 1.35 million. Now that does represent an increase in the amount of money that has been spent to settle motor claims. However, I think it's significant that members recognise a couple of things. The first is that we have figures within the report showing that in the year 22-23, 333 claims were settled, and in 23-24, 301 claims were settled. Represents of the settlements in 22-23 and 85% of settlements last year. So there is a downward trajectory in the amount of liability. And that falls down to 5 things that my colleagues who deal with motor claims have advised me. The first one is supply chain issues. Quite frankly, people are on longer rentals once they've been involved in a collision with the police. It used to be the case that a repair to someone's car could be effected within 5 to 7 days. But anecdotally, we're now hearing that could be anything up to a month. Obviously, the police are paying for 3 weeks of extra and additional rental on vehicles for people. Sticking with the supply chain issues, the costs of parts have gone up in the last few years. It's as simple as that. And this brings on to almost the third part, which is that we've been told that garages no longer stock an awful lot of the parts that they used to stock simply because of cash flow. Where a garage might have 20 of a particular thing 2-3 years ago, they just don't carry it now. They order it in as and when it's necessary. This increases costs and it increases the amount of time. There's also been a jump in the labour costs since Brexit and COVID. And last but not least, energy payments have been added as a surcharge in the last couple of years that just didn't exist 3 to 4 years ago. So what I would say to members is that although there does seem to be, there is an increase in the financials for motor vehicle settlements, the actual number of settlements has had a significant reduction. It's real life economics that is driving that figure up, so that there was nothing within the figures there that unduly concerned me. These are just the realities of dealing in the modern economic supply chain. If members are quite happy, I'm more than happy to move on to page 5 of the report. This is a new report that was requested by members. I believe it's called a run chart. And what it allows, hopefully, is members to see the numbers of claims that we're settling in respect of each of these types of cases. It won't come as a surprise that the motor claims are way higher than, for example, the employment tribunal claims. It's just a fact of life that we're involved in more bumps and scrapes than we are in employment tribunals. But I hope that members are sufficiently satisfied with the run table. That this was something that they wanted included within the report, which should hopefully very quickly allow you to see any emerging trends as this table grows. Turning to page 6 of the report, this is about employer liability cases. And what I would say is that although there does seem to be a rather large jump from 78 cases to 93 cases between quarters 2 and quarters 4, I've indicated within the report this is the result of one incident in the Edinburgh area, and it's a matter that I can address members on within the private session should they wish further detail on that. That being said, there's nothing else within the table that immediately jumped out as me as being an anomaly or something that is unduly high. Most of the other stuff is staying relatively static, both the geographical breakdown of the cases we face and the types of cases that we're facing. Page 7 goes into a little bit more detail about the types of case together with the geography. Members will see that the overwhelming majority of cases that we face in an employer liability sense are to do with injuries at work. And if you involve trips, slips and falls within those figures, then it's even more the case that it's accidents at work that are causing most of the issues. Again, this is something that I will continue to highlight at DCC Spears board. And if there are any or obvious training issues or gaps, then we'll look to settle that. We will look to address that. The one thing that I would say is that as an organisation as big as this, together with the number of staff we have, there was nothing there that was halting me in my tracks. These are figures that are pretty much in line with what we faced over the last 5 to 6 years, certainly in the time I've been here. Broken down cases into employer liability, as I say, on page 7. Page 8 is employment tribunal cases. Members will see that it continues to be the case that the overwhelming number of cases we face in tribunals relate to disability discrimination and sex discrimination. I can advise members that HR are obviously aware of each and every tribunal we face, and any lessons learned as a result of any tribunal that we face will be implemented. With regards to the public liability table, Members will be aware that there was a new claims register introduced during the course of the last financial year. The truth of the matter is that the table on page 9 will grow in its information as it's used and populated more. I would hope to have the public liability table into the same type of format as we see for the employment tribunals. But as I've said in the last couple of committees, it is an iterative process, and we'll strive to provide all the tables and all the information that members seek. You'll be pleased to hear that I'm onto the appendix, and that one is just a rundown of the amounts of money that we've used to settle over the last 5 to 6 years. Members have indicated they wish that to remain. A new part of the report is almost an overview of some of the other work that legal services are involved in. I think it was fair comment that an awful lot of the work that we do here just isn't something that's on the radar of members. And certainly when there was a fair amount of publicity around our successful application for a human trafficking order, members were unaware of it. So it was agreed that a small part of the report would come back with high level information. So as you'll see, we opened up around about 315 new files in the first quarter of the year. We fielded around about anywhere from 100 to about 150 legal inquiries per month. January is always a much slower month in Police Scotland. Used to be the most frantic month when I used to do divorce law, but in Police Scotland it's one of the quieter months. And I hope that goes some way to providing members with some information about some of the other work that we do that perhaps you've been unaware of, because historically I've only ever come here when I'm looking for money to settle cases, as your role is to obviously indemnify the Chief Constable in litigations in which she's involved. But I'm more than happy to bring this type of information going forward, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions, perhaps other than maybe some private data questions or some of the cases I mentioned, but I'm more than happy to answer that in the private session.
Thank you very much indeed, James, for that very comprehensive overview of the highlights in your report. That's very helpful. And yes, I think we can definitely see, as you say, it's an iterative process, but we can see lots of progress in terms of presentation in the report. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but before we do that and consider the previous action, in relation to that, can I take any questions from members on the details in the report, including any issues that James has highlighted, and notwithstanding the fact that, of course, we will come back to the detail of individual cases in the private part of the meeting. I'll see Pauline first. Thank you.
Thanks very much, James. Really, really helpful. I want to thank everybody that's been involved in developing this report and taking on board members' feedback. It's really coming together and takes forward much of what we spoke about in terms of improvements, in terms of presentation. I also want to recognise the work done of the team in terms of, were it not for those two exceptional cases, the costs would have been lower this year and much more in line with what we had budgeted as well. So well done to everybody. I think given that this is almost, it is a kind of end of year report, isn't it? So it would be helpful in future to summarise just what the key learning themes have been. And how those are being captured, not the individual cases, of course not, but there must be some kind of a general themes in each of these categories about what the learning has been and how that has been captured and taken forward within Police Scotland and the other organisations involved. I think in terms of the run chart that you described. I think that shows the point that I was trying to get across with you know, presenting that data in that format. So if you look at the number of motor claims, you can see round about kind of a Q4 23-24 that, you know, from then on there's been almost kind of a stage step down in the number of claims that are coming through. So that would suggest that there's been some change in the system or the processes that's led to fewer motor claims being settled, and it would be interesting to delve into that and to understand what's happened and how that can be built on going forward. The only query that I had I didn't quite understand in the report was in tables 4.3 and 4.4, where we've got fractions of cases, I think, shown, and I wondered if somebody could just explain what those meant. So if I just get the page in front of me, so it's page 7 of the report, for example. If you look down the column around injury at work, there's kind of a 0.5s in some of those, and didn't quite understand how that could be.
I'm more than happy to address that question, Chair, but it might be better coming from the expert.
Okay.
I'm happy to come in, thank you. So
Thank you, Claire Louise.
the tables that are there have been provided by myself. So when we've looked at the various legal registers, there are some occasions where it's actually more than one reason as to why, and so that we can keep the numbers consistent, we split it into a fraction. That's exactly what it is. So if it's appearing as an injury to work as a half decimal point, the other half will be against another category that's in there, and it'll be the same for the other types of liability where we've got that. But I don't think there's any other way that we can record that because of the way that the legal register is presented for us to go in and capture that information. But hopefully that provides a bit of insight. It is usually either one reason or potentially two reasons. It doesn't really go into 3 or 4. But certainly in I think it's the employer liability one, it can sometimes get a bit more complicated. Not that one, sorry, the one are we on? The employment tribunal one can sometimes get a bit more. You'll see that there's a bit random fractions in there as well, and that some of those ones end up going across a few different reasons as to why they're kind of putting their claim in.
So, yeah, thanks for explaining. That's helpful. And I guess the other comment to make is that it was explained when we were meeting the team, Chris, to you and I, in terms of splitting the employer's liability into accidents at work and other claims, that we needed a coding change to be able to do that going forward. So that's obviously a work in progress at the moment, and hopefully we'll see that in future committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Pauline. Mary.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thanks, Pauline, for asking the question. I was going to ask about fractions because that had me confused as well. So thank you very much for the explanation of that, Claire Louise. It's a long time since I was last on the legal committee, and it's fair to say that the provision of information such as this has come on exponentially from those days. So just thank James and his colleagues for the provision of the data, which is always very interesting. My interest was also in how we learn from claims so that we can potentially minimise future claims or minimise damage and harm. So I understand that the committee gets quite a lot of information about the learning from high value claims that have been settled, but I'm not seeing a huge amount in this report about what we're learning or what the organisation is learning from lower value settlements. So obviously it's not about the learning or the actions of the legal department, but of the whole organisation, learning from the claims that have been made, and particularly from those that have had to be settled, sometimes at quite significant cost. So I wondered if there was something that we could start to capture, if we're not already capturing it, so that we could get an understanding of where the thinking about a particular claim has led to actions which would prevent future claims, or which would minimise costs. So is there anything you can help me with in that respect, James?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an absolutely fair point that you make. I am aware, and I don't wish to ride roughshod all over ACC Ratcliffe's area, but there certainly has, since DCC Spears has taken over, almost a demand at his boards for us to bring forward any learning that has occurred. You're absolutely right, Mary, in as much as very often legal are involved at the last minute when things have already gone wrong, and it's then a matter of fighting it in a tribunal or in a court. I'm not sure if you're aware of the CARP that was introduced, and it's basically a meeting between PSD, P&D as it was, HR now, and legal services on each and every tribunal that's raised. I don't think it's a fluke that if you look, the overwhelming amount of money that's paid in settlements is as a result of employer liability issues or employment tribunal issues. And certainly the introduction of the CARP was to see whether or not any learning could be brought forward within that employer sphere. But you're absolutely right. If we can stop some of the lower level public liability matters, then again there would be a reduction in the amount of money that the organisation is putting out. What I would say is that an awful lot of the public liability issues are as a direct result of what would probably be categorised as accidents or just things that happen. You know, a cop jumps a fence chasing somebody and the fence collapses. There's probably not an awful lot of learning in that case, but we are responsible for fixing that fence. So an awful lot of the public liability side of things, we probably wouldn't be able to identify too much in the way of learning. However, slips, trips, falls, are we icing our car parts enough during the winter months, that type of thing? That's certainly something that I can take away, discuss with ACC Ratcliffe and DCC Spears, just to see if there's something that we can absolutely put in place that will allow that type of information to go within this report. But I certainly take your point. If I'm able to capture that type of information, I'm more than happy to bring it to this committee.
Thank you very much, James. That's really helpful. You're absolutely right. There's not a lot we can do to prevent some of these cases at all. You know, that would be foolish to think we could, but there will be some that, with changes to the way we do things, we could minimise that. So thank you very much. That's helpful. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mary and Pauline, for the questions. Thank you, James and Claire Louise. I think that takes us to the conclusion of that item. Clearly, we can see a lot of progress in terms of presentation around the narrative and the breakdown and the charts and tables, which are extremely helpful. There's, as you've acknowledged, James, this is an iterative process. There's more progress to be made, particularly in relation to this point about reflecting on learning and how that learning is shared. So I will propose that we leave that action open and come back to it at our next meeting if members are content with that. Thank you. Thanks. I can see nods there. Mary, you've still got your hand up. Is that a legacy? Yeah, it is. Okay, just double checking. Thank you. So thank you very much indeed, colleagues. Thanks again, James and Claire Louise. Really welcome all of the work that has been done on that report. That just now takes us to the last item on the public part of the agenda, which is the Legal Committee work plan. Do members have any questions or comments on that? No, I'm not seeing any. Can we note that? Thank you. Okay, thank you. That takes us